This IOB episode, Are You a Snowflake? And a critique of the Midnight Blood Hour. You're listening to the IOB Podcast. Our goal is to make you and your podcast the best. Let me try that again. The Midnight Blood Hour. Yeah, see, I'm not as good. Those guys did much better. So the question I asked at the very beginning there, are you a snowflake? Yeah, now, this is kind of a negative term, right? I mean, a snowflake in nature is something that we all love. They're beautiful. They're so unique. They're special. I think there was a Charlie Brown episode where, was it Charlie Brown or Linus actually found two snowflakes that looked alike, but by the time he could prove it, they had melted. So, yeah, I would like to see that. But, yeah, I think it was Charlie Brown. Anyway, are you a snowflake? So I think the answer for everybody is no, I'm not a snowflake. Well, maybe for some people they are. What I mean by this question is, are you unique? Are you special? And I mean it in a positive way. And I'm talking specifically about your intros, the way you do your intro, the music that you use for your intro, the style of your intro. This is what I'm talking about. Now, there's so many styles. There's not that many, actually. I mean, you know, the one I recommend, give a teaser, have some intro music, then say, welcome to the IOB podcast, and then start, which is exactly what I did in this podcast. I really think that is a great style, a great format for an intro. But the music is actually going to play a key role in this situation. And I told you guys that TJ and I would change up our intro music. We haven't yet, so I promise by the next episode, we'll change up the intro music, but I'll probably keep my format the same. So I'm really curious as to how you guys think it goes. But a custom intro is super important. It's your podcast. It's your podcast. Your name or your team's name is on that podcast. Your product, your company name is on that podcast. So you want your intro to be you. You want it to be you as in unique. When you choose music for your opening, obviously you can't choose something copyrighted, right? I mean, we want to use something by Pink Floyd or AC/DC or Britney Spears or Maroon 7. Is it Maroon 5? Yeah. You could do that, and people do. I've heard you. But eventually it will get flagged, and that's going to cost you an audience. Eventually, those big distributors of podcasts, they're not going to allow it. Even a couple of bars, you will get caught. This happens really easily on YouTube. YouTube is really good at catching people for any tiny bit of copyright problems. And generally, YouTube is nice, and they'll just monetize your video for the copyright owner. But that can really be a bad thing, right? Because let's say your whole podcast or your whole YouTube video is like 20 minutes long or an hour long, and you worked really hard. You did a lot of research. You did a lot of editing, and you used 5 seconds from an AC/DC song because that song was perfect for what you were saying, and all of your hard work goes to AC/DC. You know, this could be a problem. What happens if your video becomes viral? You lose everything. So once again, YouTube is nice. They'll generally keep your video up so you don't lose your audience, but they're going to give all the monetization to AC/DC. Podcasts aren't working out that way yet. Now, sometimes you can get by with using some copyrighted songs. Eventually, you will get caught, especially if your podcast becomes bigger and bigger and bigger. I don't know how the algorithms work, but they do. Some podcasts would definitely shine from using a popular song like AC/DC. You know, that song is going to fire up the podcaster. It's going to set the mood for the podcast, and the listener hears it and is ready to go. AC/DC. Now, I just love AC/DC. That's all I'm thinking. Thunderstruck. It's really terrible singing today. But again, that copyright infringement will bite you in the A55, right? ASS. So what to do? In this situation? Have a custom track made. There are many musicians out there that can make you a custom track. Obviously, we are one of them. TJ is the greatest, but you can find whoever you want. Stick with TJ. It's never going to sound exactly like the song you're thinking from AC/DC. For example, if you're thinking Thunderstruck is the song I want, you simply can't do that. The musician needs to make something that has the same vibe. That's the key. So when you have a song idea that's just perfect for your intro or something that you want in your podcast, be careful of copyright infringement. Find a musician and create that same vibe. That's what musicians can do. The vibe is what you want. Yeah, of course, if we could use AC/DC, that's cool, but we can't. Get this done as soon as you can and keep your back catalog legal. Can you imagine you've done 50 podcasts, all of them with actually some illegal music in there, and then suddenly your podcast becomes popular, and then iTunes, for example, says, whoa, copyright problem, and they take down all of your back catalog. So what are you going to do? Are you going to re-edit? Yeah, there's things you can do, but what a nightmare. Keep it. Do this as soon as possible. Do it as soon as possible. What about the free stuff out there? There's a lot of free stuff out there. There is definitely a lot of great free music, lots of great sites, lots of great musicians, lots of talent, and you can even get tracks which you pay for that will sound super, really excellent. But there are two big problems. Number one, often you will not have exclusive rights to that music. You can use it in your podcast, on your YouTube videos. You can use it for commercial purposes. You can make money, but you still don't necessarily have exclusive rights to that music, which means only you can use it. Remember, YOUnique. Other people might be able to use this music too. Believe it or not, that happens a lot. I had an old podcast years ago where I used music that I got from YouTube. YouTube allows you to use some music tracks in your productions, and I used that. And oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I recently saw an advertisement on YouTube that had the same music. And I was like, and this is a big company, well, relatively big company. And I was thinking, that's my music. That's music from my stuff. Obviously, somebody else created it, but that uniqueness disappeared. And it was kind of interesting. It was kind of funny that they used the same music, but that mystique, the uniqueness, disappeared. Number two, you are molding yourself to the music. When you get somebody else's music that is already created, you have to mold yourself to the music. And that can definitely work. That's not a problem for some people. However, it's much better when the music molds to you. So if you're working with somebody who's designing a custom intro for you, you can say, I just want, 3 seconds of this, and then the drum is a little too loud. I want a different style here. If you can do that, then the music is molding to you. It is truly your style. It is truly something that you are fitting to you. It is the ultimate in an intro. And they're not that much. You can find people who will make intros for probably $50. You'll find people who will make intros for $500 and probably $5,000. So it depends on, your budget and who you want to go with. But again, my recommendation is go with us, go with TJ, but definitely get something custom made. Music has a lot of power. Don't let the music dictate your podcast. Let the music fit you, your voice, and your style. And once you have your own intro down, then you can add music beds. You can add transitions. You can add a closing that fits your intro. And now, once you have all of that, your podcast has a very whole feeling. Yeah, it sounds really great. The full package, from intro to outro, everything is you. Podcast critique. This episode's podcast critique, we're going to critique the Midnight Blood Hour. Oh boy, just the name alone. It's a great name, but it tells me it's going to be a kind of a horror type podcast. And that is true, but it's real life horror. The Midnight Blood Hour is actually a really great podcast. It's a true crime podcast that takes place in New Mexico. The focus right now is because they are from New Mexico. They're going to talk a lot about New Mexico. And I've been to New Mexico. What a beautiful state. But they feel that talking about the violent crimes that are happening in New Mexico is very important, and that is the crux of their podcast. And I have to say, I don't really want to talk about the content of podcasts because, everybody's got a different angle and stuff like that. But this particular podcast was actually, I don't want to say special, but very touching to me. They have a series called the Angel Baby series, which talks about a tragedy involving a baby, a small child, and they're true stories, and they're very sad stories. But the purpose of the podcast is not to talk about something horrible and tragic. The purpose is actually to kind of educate people and let people know that these things happen. We need to do something. We need to prevent them. We need to help people. So it's actually a wonderful podcast. I really like it. And I understand, the host of the show was saying how this is actually a very difficult podcast. The Angel Baby series in particular is very difficult to prepare for. Oh my God, I can't imagine how difficult it is because we're dealing with real life. Many of us are parents or were parents or want to be parents. What a difficult series, but I just commend both of you on doing a fantastic job. It's really a great podcast. In particular, I do like that series, but yes, it is heavy, and they talk about other things too, other types of true crimes that happen so far in New Mexico. I think it's a great podcast, and I look forward to hearing updates. Now, with all of that being said, let's get into some critiquing, and I think you guys know what I'm going to talk about. First of all, let's listen to their intro. Nice and creepy. I'm not sure if this is recorded. I'm not sure how it's recorded, but it's good.
Good evening.
Okay, so we had a nice drop-off in the volume of the background music, and then the microphone comes on. We can actually hear the microphone click on, and there's a nice echo, almost a little bit too much echo, but the effect is good.
Welcome to the Midnight Blood Hour.
The Midnight Blood Hour. Who's that dude?
We are your hosts.
Will,
yeah, great. So the voice color, obviously, of Will, and who's the lady?
And Lady Irene.
Lady Irene. The voice color is different, and that's fine. However, if you guys actually used what we call a multi-track editing system, you can see this difference really clearly, and you can balance it. Now, it's actually not that difficult to learn, but the first time you hear about it, what are you talking about? I understand it can be confusing, but it's something that as you continue to produce podcasts, it's something that you will want to do. Both of you have great voices. Lady Irene has a very clear, kind of, I don't want to say high-pitched, but a very clear voice, whereas Will is a lower-pitched voice, and it's, I don't want to say dark, but it's more, so to speak, colorful, okay? So we want to try and match these voices, And the way to do that is with the level. And you can do things with equalizers and stuff like that. This is actually not my area of expertise, but I know that you can match these different styles of voices a bit better. Right now, what I'm hearing from Will and Lady Irene is raw audio, and I can hear your charisma. I can hear how you work together, but to be honest, the blend is a little bit off. However, once again, while this is important in production, when it comes to storytelling, it's less important, because if you have a great story to tell, people are going to listen and they're going to enjoy it. And to be honest, sometimes this raw type of video is very nice. It shows the essence of podcasting, right? Not a produced show, not a professionally produced show, but a show by my neighbors, a show by guys that I would drink a beer with. And that's what I'm getting from you guys. So I'm critiquing you. I'm telling you that audio levels do need or can be matched up a little bit better, but that's okay. Let's keep going here. Let's finish this intro.
Hope you enjoy.
Okay, so that is something that you can fix. Now, hope you enjoy, and we hear a little bit of music, and then suddenly it stops, and there's nothing, and a mic clicked on. Listen again.
Hope you enjoy. Warning.
Okay, so you can hear that kind of that dead space. This is something, again, that's actually something really easy to fix with software where you can take your background music and your recording, your voice recording, and if you have 2 tracks, you can have the background music fade out nicely like you did, and then bring in the voice over the top of that fade. There are many programs, software available that are free, and they're not complicated. The key is they're not complicated to use. It's something that I really encourage you to look into as you continue to produce your podcast. Now, the next thing I want to talk about are microphone levels. And level is a fancy word for volume. So I want you guys to listen to this section here.
It makes you think twice about some of the things that either you do or you've done in your past.
Yeah, right. You know, that's the other thing I was thinking about we used to also do is remember we used to.
So compared to the intro, this audio level is different, and you want to try to keep those the same. And it's not easy, I understand, because sometimes you record your intro at this time, and then you record another section at another time, and then you have the actual interview. So you might have 2, 3, 4, 5 different recording periods, and sometimes the audio levels can really be different. Again, with software, this can easily be fixed, and it does make a difference. One thing I want to say to Will, especially to Will, not so much to Lady Irene, is sometimes I hear you talking into the microphone, and then it sounds like you're talking away. It sounds like you're talking away. I can hear your voice kind of trail away from the microphone. This is actually a habit that you want to fix, okay? Always remember. So in my situation, I've got a microphone in front of my face, and I've got a foam cover on the microphone. And what I try to do all the time is have my lips touching the foam, okay? Or my whiskers. I have a kind of a mustache, not a beard. I wish I had a beard, but I can't. But I have something touching the foam all the time, and that tells me that I know my audio levels are going to be consistent. Sometimes they're going to get loud, sometimes they're going to get low, but if I sense that my face is not touching the foam, then I know, okay, I need to fix that. So I don't know what your audio is. I don't know what your microphones are. I'm assuming there's not a pop filter or foam cover on the microphone. You might be using one microphone. I'm not sure. But this is something also, as you progress, you're going to want to focus on, you're going to want to think about. When it comes, there's some echo in your show too. And when it comes to echo, believe it or not, people often record in their closet. And the idea is you've got all this clothing around you to absorb the echoes, the vibrations of the sound. That's a good idea. Another simple idea, believe it or not, is to have you facing into a curtain. Be as close as possible to a curtain. Okay? So as you speak out, that curtain is going to absorb a lot of your voice vibration. It's not going to come back into the microphone. When it comes to microphones, I don't know what you are using. However, I would experiment because you're at the very beginning stage of your podcast, and I think it's a great podcast. The subject matter is great. Not just the Angel Baby series, but the entire subject matter is great. I think a lot of people, especially in New Mexico, obviously would be interested. I would consider experimenting a little bit, perhaps with a smartphone. I don't know if you have a smartphone or a tablet or something like that, because believe it or not, especially the iPhone, and I'm sure the Android phones are the same, the microphone quality is actually really good. It all depends on how you are editing your final product. I don't know what software you're using in that case too. For me, I like to use a multi-track editor, which means I put my voice on one line. I can put my guest's voice or my co-host's voice on another line. And I can put my music on another line. And then I can match these levels so everything works out. I can even, depending on the software you have, you can take out the echo and things like that. So you guys are in the beginning. You guys are doing great. However, I do really recommend you consider your audio a lot. And I really would experiment with a different microphone, perhaps a smartphone. It might really be good. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is your CTA, your call to action. And I want to focus on two parts here. You guys did great, but once again, I want you to listen to the audio.
Here within the next couple days, I'm not going to make you guys wait a full week just because we already made you 2 weeks for this episode.
Okay, so what you're saying is you created this episode and then you don't want people to wait 2 weeks for the next episode, so you're going to try and get it out quicker. And my God, as a podcaster, you know what? I used to do a daily podcast, and that was so tough. Even though the podcast length was actually less than 10 minutes, the first month, I was good. The second month, it's okay. The third month, oh my God, I'm dragging. As time goes by, you will miss a day or a week. And sometimes you miss more than a week. And you feel terrible because you know that you have listeners waiting for you. And consistency is so important when you produce a podcast. But one thing I recommend, because we are all human, we're going to miss a day, we're going to feel sick, we're not going to feel well. I highly recommend not saying when you're going to put out the next podcast. And I know it's kind of an easy out. However, if I tell my regular podcast listeners, all right, next Tuesday, I'm going to give you this. And then next Tuesday comes and I don't give them that. And on Wednesday, I don't give them that. And on Thursday, you know how it goes. And people, they're just going to lose the attraction that they had to the podcast. There's a great podcaster. What's his name? Dan Carlin. He does a history podcast. Man, fantastic. If you like history, it's just a tremendous podcast. And I don't know how he is nowadays. He was terrible with updates. Absolutely terrible. But his content was so good. Every day, sometimes twice a day, I would check to see if he updated his podcast. And I'm not joking. Sometimes it would take weeks. I think sometimes it would take months. And he would always apologize in his podcast. I'm sorry it took me so long. But he would never say when the next episode was coming. but he would remind us that he is working on the next episode. And that is crucial. Obviously, in a perfect world, every Tuesday at 2 o'clock, you're going to release a new podcast. That's what we want to do. And if you're working for a publishing company, a broadcasting company, a radio station, you will put that out on Tuesday. But we're not. We're podcasters. Although we want to have that perfect Thursday night, 8 p.m. Seinfeld time slot, we're human. Things happen. And that's why I highly recommend to everyone not to really be careful about saying, I'm putting it out on Tuesday. I'm putting it out on January 25th. I really recommend that you not do that. I really recommend that you say, in the next podcast, in the podcast I'm working on now, I hope to release it I will release it as soon as possible. This is a much better approach. It takes a lot of pressure off you, and yet it puts enough pressure on you to get to it. Okay, so that's something really important that I wanted to talk about regarding that part of your CTA, which is excellent, by the way. Telling people what's coming next is really crucial. Something actually I need to work on more. And let's finish it out here.
So I'm definitely going to see about getting this cold case up and running within the next couple days. If there are any New Mexico cases that anyone wants to hear, please reach out to us at midnight13blood@gmail.com.
Okay, and did you hear how the audio started crackling and we just started losing it? So I think, I don't know what your setup is, but I think perhaps you're not talking into your mic, or you've somehow changed your position of talking into the mic.
You can follow us on TikTok at Midnight Blood Hour.
And again, you can hear it really clearly there.
On Instagram at midnight_blood_hour, or on Facebook at Midnight Blood Hour.
Okay. Your CTA, your call to action is great. You're giving everybody where they need to go. It's very clear. However, the audio quality needs to be fixed, because if I'm driving, so right now I'm sitting in my office, I've got speakers, I'm listening to my speakers, so I can hear what you're saying. But if I'm driving, it's going to be a little bit tough to catch. And even if I'm really interested in the podcast and I want to contact you guys, I have a story to tell or I have a question to ask, Midnight Blood Hour is such an easy, it's a great name. It's a really easy name to remember. But was that at gmail.com? Make sure the audio quality is as clear as possible. And the best way to do it, again, lips on the mic, to be as close to the mic. It depends on what kind of microphone you have, but to have that steady, consistent microphone level, that volume level. And one more thing about microphones. There's two things, especially for Lady Irene. One thing is I hear your P's popping a lot. And there's something called a pop screen, and they're not expensive. And you can attach it to a microphone. I think the smartphone method that I mentioned, you don't really need to worry about a pop screen, but a pop screen can really help reduce the sound. And there is some of that. I'm not getting that from Will. In Will's situation, he needs to just stay in front of his microphone, whatever it is that he's using. So experiment with that. Work on your audio. I really look forward to your next podcast, and keep up the excellent work, guys. You're doing great stuff. This is actually a really important type of podcast. It's local. It has a really powerful message, and you're bringing that to people in New Mexico, and also the United States, and also the world. And the important thing is to keep doing it. I appreciate the hard work and the stress that it must include. So yeah, great. Keep up the hard work, guys. Do you hear that? Yep, that means another end to another podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the IOB Podcast. Please send me an email. I would love to help you improve your podcast, to make it better, to find something that you can work on to make your podcast the best. My email, Mike, M-I-K-E, Mike at introoutrobed.com. TJ is ready to make great intros for you guys. Intros, music beds, outros, transitions, whatever your music needs are, TJ is there for you. So far, I have not seen a genre that TJ cannot create. So we have a challenge, by the way, in the newsletter. I'll get to that in a second. So please send us an email, contact at introoutrobed.com. And by the way, if we critique your podcast like we did tonight for the Midnight Blood Hour, TJ will offer you a free 20 to 30 second custom intro that is yours. It's exclusive. Only you can use it in your podcast or on your YouTube, and that's pretty cool. That's a free offer, so it's something to take advantage of. Our newsletter is fantastic, and this is where we talk about everything. This is where you need to get great information and ask questions. We've got interviews and so many things coming up, so please sign up for the newsletter, introoutrobed.com. Just put your name, your email, verify that, and you are good to go. We are on iTunes, and if you could please leave a rating, of course, 5 stars and a really nice comment is exactly what we're looking for, but go ahead and be honest. We really appreciate any ratings wherever you watch or listen to this podcast. We sincerely appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys. Have a fantastic week. And remember, the IOB Podcast for Podcasters is here to make your podcast the best.